we need good systems, not in 3 years or 10 years or 20 years. We need good systems right now to figure out, do we trust these machines and who do we allow to interact, coordinate, communicate with which other parties?
Welcome to The Future Of, a podcast by Fresh Consulting, where we discuss and learn about the future of different industries, markets, and technology verticals. Together, we'll chat with leaders and experts in the field and discuss how we can shape the future human experience. I'm your host, Jeff Dance. In this episode of The Future Of, we're joined by Jan Liphardt, founder of OpenMind, to explore the future of decentralized robotics. By way of background, OpenMind offers an open source OS for intelligent robots and a decentralized AI control layer for large-scale robotic coordination. Their AI native software stack gives robots the ability to think, learn, and work together. Jan received a PhD from Cambridge University and serves as an associate professor of bioengineering at Stanford and a professor in residence at StartX Accelerator. He's passionate about the intersection of data, machines, and decision-making. So am I. So I'm excited to kind of go deeper with you. His work's been supported by various U.S. government entities. He's also a Soros scholar, the guy who actually invented the pill, a Sloan Research Fellow, and a Hellman Fellow. So he has a lot of good background for our topic today. Jan, welcome to the show. Grateful to have you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Great. For those who don't know you, I'd like to go just a little bit deeper. You've worked in the field of physics and biotech, to AI, and now we're talking about robotics. Kind of what led you to this path where you wanted to go a lot deeper in robotics?
Oh, well, like a lot of people, I've loved the notion of being surrounded by intelligent machines since I was a little kid. And I'm sure all of us, when we were little, we read books about the future and we saw movies about the future. And whether it was Star Wars or A Space Odyssey or Isaac Asimov's books. So for many of us, of course, as we're growing up, the notion of being surrounded by robots that can talk, think, plan, help, work with us was super fascinating to me. And so when I started out in academia, I was a physics professor, and part of that involved building instrumentation for optical trapping. So that involves lasers and actuators and quadrant photodetectors and CCDs and software to move large amounts of data back and forth, thermal drift issues, stability. And that was my first exposure to connecting hardware using software and needing all of that to work together really well. Then I got drawn into more healthcare and medically relevant data and decision making. And that sensitized me to questions relating to privacy and computing on sensitive data, primarily healthcare data. And so then it was like a small step to put those things together, this fascination about using my hands and building stuff with sort of appreciation for how valuable data are and all the useful things you can do for humans if you're able to connect data, privacy, and advanced sort of physical manipulation capabilities.
Thank you. Yeah, I can see how that kind of all comes together in robotics, especially if you think about robots that are more human-like or that could solve problems. That's great. We heard that you live with a humanoid and 2 robot dogs. Is that true?
Yes, it's actually 3 robot dogs.
Oh,
And
okay.
so that's Bits, Bites, and Frenchie are the dogs, and Iris
Okay.
humanoid.
Okay. They
Uh,
got names. This is
yeah,
good.
yeah, of course. Come on, man. These are not just like inert pieces of plastic. And when you talk to a lot of roboticists, I think even roboticists tend to think of robots as something they work with in the lab. But I encourage everyone here who works on humanoids, bring one home with you and just see what that's like to have a humanoid in your home. One of the retrospectively obvious things is that in the lab, you can have these big cooling fans running to keep the electronics cool. And of course, in a home, that's absolutely the last thing you want. You don't want in the middle of the night for the humanoid to be running this like really powerful cooling fan going at 3 in the morning. And those are all the little things you begin to appreciate when you're surrounded by machines in your home.
Oh, that's fascinating. You mentioned if we're going to live with machines, we should know how they think, and we should help them think better. So is that why you've tried to incorporate them in your home and more of the daily living to try to kind of get in that mindset?
Yeah, it's to learn all the little things that you only see when you have just like normal interactions in your household. For example, my 13-year-old Ben, who's in middle school, just asked one of the quadruped dogs for help with his math homework. And that's not something I prompted. I didn't say, hey, Ben, there's 4 LLMs, one of which can win the math Olympics. That you can query through this quadruped dog. He just said, hey Bits, like what are these? Like help me solve these equations, and the dog is perfectly happy to do that. And that's something that happens spontaneously when you have the technology around you and around your kids, and that uh, sensitizes you, I think, to all the gaps right now as it
Mm,
relates to robotic software and hardware.
that's fascinating. So the robot dog was connected to an LLM, and so your son was asking for help with his homework. The dog wasn't maybe moving around, or maybe it was close to him, and so he was able to do that, but it was really that AI interface where kinda AI is the new UI, that he was able to kinda request help because the machine was close by. He coulda done it on his computer, but the dog was right there, so he asked for help with his math right there.
Exactly. And you're absolutely right that, of course, you can interact with AI through a phone or computer. But what I've noticed is that people are naturally drawn to movement, and they're
Mm,
naturally drawn to other things that look at them and look at their face and their eyes and are more expressive. There's just something very, very basic about that, especially like with little kids.
yeah.
When the dogs go to the park, all the little kids come running. Like their faces light up and they're all looking and they ask the dogs to like jump and sit and bark and they are infinitely more engaged
Mm,
than with a computer screen.
interesting, interesting. So you have more engagement and kinda interaction via form factor that's moving, which is very human-like, of course, is something things that move. We're at the intersection also of, design, software, and hardware, and so we do robotics, but, our belief is even design concepts should move so that because it could be a living thing, right?
Yeah.
So, that's great. Well, I wanna talk a little bit more about the current state and then kinda get to the future state a little bit. This word decentralization, you just described robots as moving from kind of individual smart agents to coordinated distributed systems. Why is decentralization such a critical evolution for the field of robotics?
Well, holy cow, there's a lot going on in your question. If you look at people, like the fact that we're interacting now through
Yeah.
technology, humans have developed these amazing systems for connecting, like Zoom and telephones, and we have mail, and we have messaging. And as we build things and do things, humans have found it incredibly useful to make it very convenient to reach out to millions or billions of other humans. And that allows us to do amazing things. And of course, there's every expectation that autonomous, intelligent, creative machines will want to do the same. So the first question is,
Mm.
if you have a bunch of quadrupeds and humanoids running around in your home, how do they talk to one another? How do they talk to other machines? A great example is if Iris wants to help with the groceries and the groceries are delivered by a Waymo, how does Iris, the humanoid, interact with Waymo? Does Iris use her 3 fingers? She doesn't have 5 fingers, she has 3 fingers. Does she use her 3 fingers to use an iPhone? That seems like incredibly labored. Is Iris able to directly interact with the Waymo API? Or
Mm.
does Iris use specialized software that was originally built for blind people to interact with Waymo in that way? How does Iris open the trunk of the Waymo when it shows up outside? And when you start thinking about how machines can connect, that immediately gets you into territory also of which machine shall you trust. For example, if you have a humanoid in your home, then obviously if someone attacks that humanoid and is able to command actions, someone is able to unlock your front door from the inside,
Mhm.
right? Because humanoids can walk up to your front door from the inside and unlock it and let other people in. And that's, of course, exactly what happened when one robotics lab, whose name I will not mention, gave access to others to their robots inside the lab. One of the first things that happened is someone commanded the robot to go and push the door open, and that's why when you start thinking about like machine-machine communications, you then immediately land on questions relating to which machine shall you trust? How do you identify a machine? There's no passports or birth dates, or is this an American machine or a Singaporean machine? So all the ways, all the things humans have invented to help with trust do not necessarily scale one to one to robots.
So, as you think about that problem and the opportunity, the idea is, hey, for the future where robots to robots collaborate, essentially, if that's natural to humans and that's going to be natural for robots to be more productive or efficient to work together, we need systems, protocols to enable trust for actions that are performed. And so you're saying, hey, this is a you know, as we think about distributed systems, also decentralization, you've kind of talked about the problem, but like why is decentralization so critical? Is it so that we enable trust systems for this robot to robot kind of collaboration? Because it seems decentralization seems counterintuitive to trust. So go a little deeper there if you can.
Sure. Like decentralization is a really loaded term. There's like computer science perspective having to do with like distributed or decentralized systems. And then there's things like blockchains and so forth. And that gets us
Hmm.
into territory of public immutable ledgers. And what's important when you talk about blockchains are characteristics such as immutability. So imagine, for example, you want to establish what actually happened and where things are. Then immutability all of a sudden can turn out to be an important characteristic. What we're seeing very, very, very practically is that most countries and most governments are way behind. It's almost like they're asleep.
Yeah.
And very practically, as we deploy robots in cities, we need good systems, not in 3 years or 10 years or 20 years. We need good systems right now to figure out like where are these machines? Who are these machines? Do we trust these machines? And who do we allow to interact, coordinate, communicate with which other parties? And so, just very pragmatically speaking, we found some of the infrastructure that has been developed around blockchains to be very easy to repurpose to deal with questions relating to things like machine identity and machine communications. Of course, no one in their right mind would use a blockchain for machine-machine communications directly, simply
Mhm.
due to cost, latency, and many, many other technical issues. But certainly the identity and coordination part can be dealt with a blockchain, and then of course the actual data would move off chain. Um, but the main experience, or the main observation has been that, for example, when I walk around, the little town where I live with the quadrupeds, some people ask me, "Hey, Jan, how come you're not scared?" And I say, "Well, there's 2 reasons. The first reason is I wrote the software and it's open source. So if you have any concerns about, what these machines are thinking, just go to GitHub and get the code and see how this stuff is architected, number 1. So that's why we really care about open source. And the second thing is that, we wrote Asimov's laws of robotics onto Ethereum. And so when the machines boot, they're getting their guardrails from a immutable, global, public, source of truth. And so then you say, "Oh," then, Jeff, imagine you then say, "Hey, Jan, I don't actually trust you. Like, who are you to claim that?" And I can say, "Jeff, go to this address and go look up Asimov's laws, and that's what the robots are reading." We are not unique in that at all. If you look at Anthropic, they've done an amazing job at thinking about things like constitutional AI.
Mm.
If you look at Google, they're doing a great job at thinking of constitutional robotics. They bake Asimov's laws of robotics into Gemini Robotics, which is their new robotics focused model. And I think across the industry, there's more and more appreciation that there needs to be some system of rules, and it would be incredibly dumb to hide those rules. Like if
Mhm.
I tell you, "Hey, man, Jeff, we have this all under control. The rules are baked in," but then your natural question would be, "Okay, like prove that." And so that's why the rules also need to be public. And so there's obviously a lot going on in this whole area. But the major highlights are that a lot of human-focused systems for governance, seem, severely antiquated, and governments appear to be moving very, very slowly.
Mhm.
And there's a vacuum, there's a sort of tech regulatory coordination vacuum, and, a lot of companies, us and many others like Anthropic and Google, are trying to, be ahead of the curve and anticipate some of those issues.
That's great. I love that you're getting down to the root around trust, given that people generally have a fear of change and generally from robots. And I don't know if that comes solely from the movies they've watched historically, but there is a fear of you know some sort of behavior or at minimum, replacing some of the work that they may do. But we know that historically, people feared the computer in kind of a similar way, right? And it, did a lot of great things, but it also changed us dramatically.
Right.
So
Right.
I think we would expect the same things of intelligent machines. But I love that you're getting down to the root, of, identity, trust, capability, and then transparency. Because if we're transparent and it's open, right, I can see that can breed trust, from those that, are interested in going a little deeper. Uh, you OpenMind is building a modular robotics and kinda open platform, seems like for that purpose, for, collaboration across machines. So can you share more about, what you guys are doing and some of the progress you've made?
Sure. Uh, so there's two basic approaches to building software for robots. One approach is based on the notion of an end-to-end AI. And a great example would be of software for a wheeled robot, traditionally called a car. And the point of the software is to look at the world and accelerate, stop, turn left, turn right. And for that situation, an end to end AI is awesome. You collect vast amounts of data, you spend vast amounts of money to perfect this end-to-end AI. And then when you're done, you can have awesome capability. But what happens when you add a wheel, remove a wheel, add a sensor, add wings, change the form factor? Then this end-to-end AI approach starts to get difficult. And the other issue is that when you're debugging end-to-end AI, you're peering at an enormous array of numbers, and it's not at all obvious where decisions are coming from, or where bugs are encoded, or how to upgrade or fix the system. And where we're much more on the side of is the notion of many small models. So we really like this notion of what if you didn't have one end-to-end AI, but you had 10 to 20 AIs working together and using natural language to have a conversation about what they're seeing, what information is important, what information needs to be acted on now, what the possible set of choices are, and then see that those decisions flow into the hardware abstraction layer, which governs things like movement and speech and so forth. So
Mhm.
we're very much coming down on the side of many small models. And again, we're not at all unique. I think this is what a lot of people are seeing is that if you try to own the entire stack as one monolithic model, it's
Right.
slow and expensive. And because of the architecture of the system as being composed of many individual pieces, you can imagine, for example, a robot that has learned something to be able to transmit that skill as a modular skill to another robot. For example, we are, I think, one of the first robotics company that is developing a hugging motion policy for humanoids. And the point of that motion policy is we certainly expect a humanoid to be able to safely hug people. That's not normally something that humanoids do, but we think it's kind of important. And once we have that policy and one robot has gotten really good at it, you can imagine this robot being able to share it with all his or her friends.
Mhm.
And that kind of gets us into territory of what are good systems for moving skills around from one machine to another. And the same argument can be made for data, and the same argument can be made for situational awareness and language skills and knowledge about specific individuals and things like that. And so that's getting us into territory of what we're calling fabric, which is this coordination and governance system for many connected machines.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's basic, for a lot of roboticists to kinda work on their single machine, but it gets a lot more complex, I think, when you start thinking about robot to robot communication, task coordination, collaboration. So the notion of like a fabric of skills and capabilities that you could share if the robot has the capabilities to do that is really interesting. And that is that part of the decentralization ization vision, essentially that there's a sharing amongst robots, and that becomes decentralized because you're not instructing it to go share with another robot.
That's precisely right. So just like people can share and sell skills, like imagine online math tutoring, robots, of course, are very much better at that than humans. You
Mhm,
can imagine one robot acquiring a new skill and being able to share it with millions of other machines potentially almost instantaneously.
mhm,
And that, of course, is fascinating, but also should be done with a lot of thought and responsibility as it relates to, what skills are being transmitted and who gets to see them. Um, this is some of these concepts are relatively new in the commercial and like home focused and consumer focused humanoids market. But of course, people have been tackling this kind of question for decades in the defense and military realm,
mhm,
where generally you face challenges like you have many sensors, you have satellites and airplanes and submarines. And of
mhm,
course, they all are collecting information And ideally, you would be able to assemble those assets into a coordinated team to accomplish particular missions. And that then requires knowing who's who and what their capabilities are. And it involves dynamically optimizing the combination of assets in a particular team to accomplish missions. So that's like the standard defense military formulation of this problem. It's certainly not a new problem, but it's underexplored when it relates to robots for non-defense settings, homes, families, schools,
Mhm.
hospitals, logistics, and so forth.
It's where things get exciting, right? Where there's collaboration and you can do much more, complex tasks that involve coordination. I think we're excited about that future here at Fresh as well. You know, you talked about decentralization requiring more transparency. You talked about open source, that breeding more trust, but also it opens people up to like whatever, it gives exposure or clarity to whatever you're using. And so if you know exactly what's being used, is there potential for more hacking of that? And so I'm curious more about how you mentioned kind of uh, uh, blockchain and kind of build, attaching blockchain to or Ethereum. So I'm just curious. Yeah, I noticed that your own platform uses Unitree as an example, the Unity products that come out of China. So how are you thinking about how we don't allow for the compromise of security, and allow people to kind of hack into especially a coordinated system? That's where you do see the movies, right? Where it's like, things are coordinated in the reverse, right? There's many a movie that's been or like the fleet of robots goes bad, right? So, um, yeah.
Yes.
Um,
It's
so
unfortunately true that horror movies sell a lot more tickets
yeah,
than really boring movies where things kind of work and people are happy. I mean, no one would ever go see that movie.
right, right, fair, fair. But, you mentioned warfare, and it's like we are at a today, we have countries that are using swarms of robots to, focus, kill people with agency, with their own agency.
Right.
I mean, they're sent on missions essentially, but they have a sense of agency, and that's a new realm of AI, agentic AI, and we have this word agency embedded in that, and when we talk about embodied AI, we're talking about bringing another. There's another human-like word, right? Agency, body, and we're bringing these capabilities. So, any other thoughts on the security about how we try to feel good about the systems we're building and the things that we need to do to be sure that we can trust it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the basic lessons of cryptography is that there is no such thing as security through obscurity. So if you try to invent your own like cryptographic techniques, and you keep them secret to keep them safe, that makes you look like a complete fool. That
Mm,
just doesn't work, and that's been proven over and over again. So the best way to build systems that are safe and secure is to be as open as possible. And most of the internet today runs on open source software for extremely good reason that we need the internet to kind of work. And exactly the same is true of robotics. We want this stuff to work and we want to be able to see what's going on and trust it. And that's why, like, obviously, I like have very strong convictions about this. Humanity has a dramatic, like, motivation and justification for having a lot of this infrastructure be completely open and transparent. Of
mm,
course, there are certain capabilities that might become more broadly clear and available to everyone on Earth. So there's also downsides to that. So again, that has to be navigated with some caution. But the critical thing is for everyone to know what's going on.
yeah.
And there will be
That
many like opinions and things like that. But the zeroth order thing is to make sure that people kind of know what's going on.
yeah. That resonates. So we can't have a Navajo sort of code language like they did in World War II. That's super secretive to those that want to keep it secret, essentially. Um, no, that resonates. Let's talk a little bit more about the future. you're working on the future. We're working on the future. We believe in the future of humans and machines. And I think one of the interesting things that I've discovered in talking to a lot of roboticists is the belief that the more we do this right, it'll help humans be human. As in, like, we will actually do our best work when robots do the dull, dirty, dangerous, mundane sort of things that, humans aren't necessarily meant for, even though we've got used to it. Um, so, but I'm curious, like, where do you see things going in the next 10 to 20 years? You said cities are way behind. Give us some vision for where you see things going. Obviously, things are accelerating at a rapid pace that people who do not understand with how AI is accelerating robotics. And we've held a couple conferences on it here at Fresh, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the future.
Well, so there are many misconceptions as they relate to humanoid robots. One misconception is that the point of having a humanoid robot in your home is to wet wipe your floor or fold your laundry or like pick up your socks.
Mow the
S-
lawn.
Yeah, that's an incredibly like myopic perspective on what thinking machines can do for humans. And generally, we spend most of our time looking at situations where, after the interaction of the human with the humanoid, the humans have a big smile on their face, or they've learned something new, or they've connected to people they haven't talked to in a long time, or they're healthier. So we're much more interested in those kind of use cases compared to like wet wiping your floor. That's the last thing you want is a $100,000 humanoid in soapy water in your kitchen. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so,
So the companion nature, are you saying the companion, like, intelligent, nature of a machine that has AI embodied in it, and is that where you're talking about?
yeah, that's exactly right. So educational use cases, health companions for people who live alone or people who live alone, people who have various health conditions and things like that. For example, we just had blind people reach out and say, "Hey, there's a national shortage of seeing eye dogs, and they cost $200,000 each, and they're incredibly difficult to use for blind people, among other things, because dogs poop on the sidewalk, and if you're blind, it's hard to clean up after you're seeing eye dog."
Mm.
And that's a situation where, like, it's a win for everyone. Imagine having a quadruped who's able to navigate a city, talks to you, talks to other people. It can narrate the world around you with voice, so it tells you what's
Mm.
going on, and it is always there for you. It's not that we're making seeing eye dogs extinct. It's that there's a real gap, and blind people have asked us, like, when can I get one? So that seems like a win for everyone. Another example would be education. As someone who teaches, it breaks my heart when I stare at 300 students in the lecture room because my ability to even know their names is like really hard. I may know like the top 20, 30, 40, 50 students, but
Mm.
not 300 students. And how am I, as an educator, supposed to be aware of what every student knows and doesn't know and reformulate the material to challenge them to deal with knowledge gaps they have and make sure they learn as much as possible per unit time? So, those are situations where the way we do things right now, especially like education and healthcare, seem utterly medieval.
Mm.
And we're really not doing a particularly great job. So we're spending most of our time looking at situations where systems we have currently are just not doing particularly well, and where the technology gives like an immediate benefit. And it's this is patently not about like one-to-one replacement about humans. This is about like better outcomes, like in education and healthcare, or like just making it more convenient for blind people to navigate a city.
That's fascinating, and I appreciate that perspective. Eric Schmidt said that, the AI revolution isn't, overhyped, it's actually underhyped. That we're only beginning to understand what intelligent machines can truly do. And I think that is the next wave of the future as we think about putting intelligence on top of machines. We said that, hey, smart this, but really our machines haven't been smart. They haven't had intelligence and agency. And to your point, collaboration. We're kind of at the beginning of that. So as we think about the future where you have more interoperability between robots, how do you see, the commercial partners in the robotic space, like, catching up to this? Do you see them bolting on to, a platform like yours? What we're seeing is that a lot of the robotic systems are still closed. Now, the ones for there's several that are open for educators, but the mass market is still a closed ecosystem. So I'm trying to understand how you see the market kinda opening up. Like, what is gonna help the robotics market, more become more interoperable?
Well, fundamentally, it's going to be consumers asking for capabilities. And we see that play out over and over again. The four robotics companies we work with,
Mhm,
they came to us because they said, hey, man, we have all these customers complaining. We want the robots to do this and this and this and this and spatial navigation and reasoning over physical environments and supporting dialects native to Saudi Arabia. And we want them to map homes for realtors and
mhm,
robotics companies are saying, look, we just cannot support this. Can you help us? And we said, yeah, we totally can because we have a modular architecture and it's open source and we'll get you started and going in the right direction. And by the way, around this open source software, we have a cloud of enterprise SaaS products like Spatial RAG that helps robots reason over their spatial environment and also HIPAA compliant multi-agent robotics endpoints. So if you want to deploy robot hardware into US hospitals, for example, it's very convenient to do that regardless of where the hardware was built. The software and the data are, brewed with love in San Francisco, and they stay right here on HIPAA compliant American servers.
mhm.
So the things we're seeing is that the notion of everyone wants to be the Apple of robotics. Everyone wants the hardware, cloud, app store for robots. Everyone would love to do that and then like monopolize humanoid robotics. And that's 100% precisely what I do not want as like a parent or someone who's also part of a medical school and who has like elderly parents. I do not want that. I want uh, and then you say, "Oh, Jan, are you like this, like ignorant, person?" And then my response would be, "Well, hey, look at Android. Right now, the majority of phones on Earth run Android, and there's a really, really good reason for that. Is if you're a phone hardware company, you want to sell lots of phones, and you want people to like using your software, and so you're not going to generally roll your own operating system. You're going to focus on like features that differentiate your product, and so you end up
Mhm,
Android. And I very much hope, and like everything we do here is designed to have that future be realized also for robotics, not just for cell phones.
mhm. That's a good, example. I noticed that, your website said it had Android on the website itself. Is there an underpinning of your own platform that it's Android based?
Oh, no, totally different. We basically, it's all Ubuntu, and then
Okay.
there's a lot of Python code that
Yeah.
allows on order of 10 to 20 different AIs and models to coexist and communicate. And
Mhm.
that conversation then arises the motions and speech, facial expressions, and so forth, the actions of the robot.
How many robots do you actually have, coordinating right now, like, that you guys have tested? I noticed there was a several kind of, standard libraries that you had that probably are set up for the collaboration, but, have you gone, pretty wide scale yet?
Well, we have 5 different humanoid platforms we work with from different manufacturers, all the way. Well, Unitree is one example, but
Mhm,
Engine AI, UBTech, and Deep Robotics, and also open source robotics hardware like Kscale.
mhm,
Because we want our software to be easy to deploy on many different types of hardware. 2 legs, 4 legs, wheel, not wheeled, and so forth. And so that's why it's important for us to just have a lot of different types of robots running around San Francisco. We're close to South Park, so if you want to hang out with lots of robots, come visit South Park. And mostly during lunch, one or more of our robots will be running around the park, and hopefully not being too annoying and taking your seat, at lunchtime. So we try to have our robots defer to humans when they want to sit down to have their lunch.
Nice. You mentioned, cities are far behind. And so what sort of, regulatory frameworks do you think we need to accelerate some of the movement you want to see? Like in San Francisco, did you need any sort of unique permits? Are they ahead of the times, behind the times? Tell us more about the regulatory side, because we know when we start putting intelligent machines that maybe have some of their own agency or that can collaborate on the outside, you know, cities will be scared, right? And some are more forward and others are not. But any thoughts on the, the regulatory legal side for the future?
Well, obviously, for most companies, they want to stay in business. And we're aware that if one of our robots hurts a kid, we shut down the next day. There's no question. And so, like the main thing for us as a company, obviously, is to avoid any kind of catastrophe or problem. And I would like to think that most companies, operate in kind of the same way. Um, in terms of like rules and regulations, there really aren't many that are specifically formulated for humanoid robots, but
Yeah.
certainly that there are many that relate to like don't do dumb stuff as a company, because you're probably going to be liable. One
Yeah.
gap we've noticed is it's very difficult to get insurance.
Mm.
So if you want to deploy like 100 humanoid robots into people's homes, um, good luck finding an insurance company that will write you a simple policy today. So, if anyone out here would love to start an amazing, awesome company for $1 trillion vertical, um, go build a humanoid insurance company, and we'll be your first customer tomorrow. We will.
It's one of the white spaces for sure. Robotic insurance is one of the white spaces that isn't yet filled. But it is definitely a big opportunity. So I'm with you. That's great. Uh, I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to just ask a couple more questions. Where do you think, as robots continue to accelerate with the advent of AI and that kind of being a huge accelerator, like where do you see some of the big breakthroughs coming in the next few years?
Well, one breakthrough almost certainly is going to be as many people rethink the potential roles robots can play in human society. We need to get out of this mold that robots are all around putting golf balls into boxes or wet wiping your floor. Um, if we begin to appreciate what the real opportunities are, my suspicion is that it will be a win for for society in terms of things like healthcare and education. The best story I've heard lately has to do with an Australian company, Andromeda, deploying humanoids into memory care facilities, and you're dealing with a patient population where 40% of them have not been visited by a relative or a friend in years. So they're almost completely isolated. And these humans are told to, like, don't get up out of the chair. You might fall and hurt yourself. And when you deploy a humanoid into that setting and the humanoid looks at them and listens to them and makes them smile, the human nurses in the evening have to wipe lipstick off of the head of the humanoid. Because, so imagine being 10, 20 years, you're losing your memory, and all of a sudden you have something in front of you that listens to you and makes you laugh. So obviously you're going to engage with that piece of technology
Mm.
in really interesting ways. And that may
And
sound dystopian, but who am I to criticize a situation where someone like a human who hasn't been visited by a family member in years smiles and laughs, right?
yeah, connect that person to the world's intelligence, give them empathy, have that humanoid remember everything that that person said.
Exactly.
Like I could see how that could be really powerful. So I'm seeing your vision here on the future, where our robot companions are intelligent companions, not just workers, but also intelligence companions as well, and social companions per se, with that use case in mind. Um, how do we design this future with more intent? We've seen some of the harm that smartphones does to the human race, and how that's changed kind of who we are. If the future is, swarms of robots collaborating in this sort of new paradigm, like, can you think of principles? I've heard you on the principles of openness and transparency and intent, but can you think of anything else for those that are designing these systems in the future, like you? Like, how are we assuring that there's more good and less harm? It was uh, the same Eric Schmidt that said that the race for AI dominance isn't just about innovation, it's about power, sovereignty, security, and ultimately human dignity. How we navigate this moment will define the next century of geopolitics and the kind of world we build, one that either empowers humanity or erodes it. And so we've seen this thing where technology has a life of its own, and it does good and it does bad. Uh, but how we use it, kind of typically defines, our relationship with it. So I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts on how we make sure it stays on the good side, and it benefits humanity versus the opposite. Because I don't, I think the computer, it's clear, it's more good. The smartphone, you could say it. Well, it's the computer in our pocket, and there's a lot of good, but there's been a lot of negative as well.
Yeah. I think every parent can sympathize as they watch their kids, at dinner, silently stare at their phones instead of talking about their day and what they've learned and things like that. Uh,
Right.
well, the single most important thing is, by the way, this is a whole like podcast worth of question just right there. But the main recommendation is for everyone to inform themselves and develop an opinion, try to build better technology, and tell your friends and neighbors and relatives and engage in a debate around the technology and where you want it to go. So the more people just, sit back and let things happen, the less likely we are to arrive at like an awesome outcome. So if you're an educator, like, make sure you dig into this. Technologist, regulator, parents, please make sure that you're paying attention and
Mhm.
argue and think and engage with other people around you.
Thank you. I agree. The discourse around this and the attention to it is probably one of the most important things versus just letting things. If we just consume things versus create things, and we just let things affect us, then we don't know, right? But if we create a plan, if we discuss it, if we create principles around it, and which you're doing, I think there's a chance for a much better outcome. One that, benefits, all of humanity. I'm excited about that future, and I feel responsible as a creator to chat with people like you to figure out how we can make it best for the next generation.
Yeah. I do have to say I've been a little bit disappointed by most humans, because, for example, when I give a lecture about privacy, and
Yeah.
I ask people, "Oh, who here cares about privacy?" And like everyone in the room raises their hand and says, "Yeah, of course, privacy is critical." And then I say, "Well, who here uses Gmail? It's free, right?" And like everyone raises their hand. And then I say, "Well, have you ever thought about what the business model of Gmail is and why you get free email?" And then some people say, "Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. But it's so convenient and it's free." And so there's many choices I see humans make that are not necessarily as informed as one would like them to be.
Makes sense. Well, Jan, Liphardt, thank you so much for your insights, the depth of conversation, also your passion about where you're trying to take the future. Grateful to have you on the show.
Jeff, it's been a delight, and thank you for awesome questions.
The Future of Podcasts is brought to you by Fresh Consulting. To find out more about how we pair design and technology together to shape the future, visit us at freshconsulting.com. Make sure to search for The Future of in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And on behalf of our team here at Fresh, thank you for listening.